Welcome to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast, presented by FantasyGolfBag.com, your number one source for the most in-depth PGA Tour analysis in the daily fantasy and sports betting world. Each week, our experts will discuss everything you need to know, from the course preview and key stats to top plays, fades, and strategies. Whether golf betting, grinding out cash games, or playing for a big GPP win, our team has you covered. Let's get after it.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Golf Bag Podcast. I am your host, Red Kachik, joined today by Mr. JK Ray, ASU, to talk a little Honda Classic, the PGA National, and the Bears Trap. Jacob, how's it going, man?
It's going good, Drew. Glad to be on here. Another week, another event. Moving on from the WGC limited field, but ready to jump in and get back to a full field and tackle PGA National.
Yeah, this is the first week I'm able to play cash in a while. Obviously, last week was the last week with the limited field no cut. Not a great opportunity for cash. The weeks prior with the weather at the Genesis, I wasn't very excited about. And then the week prior to that, Pebble Beach with a 3-course rotation, also with weather, not a great opportunity for cash. So hopping back on the cash train this week. So hopefully we can get some things moving as we get into this Florida swing. We got 4 good events actually back to back to back to back. So pretty excited. How did last week go with obviously DJ and Rory stealing away all the GPPs? I only played JT and a little bit of Rory. But all the winning lineups that I saw actually stacked DJ and Rory together, which I really didn't plan to do in my 5, 6, 7 lineups.
Yeah, I know one of our members, I think it was Work a Cut, and pretty much all the lineups that he did well in, and I think Drive the Green, pretty much all the way around, he stacked both of them.
Yeah, smart.
Which,
it worked out good.
Hindsight, yeah, sounds like a great move, but. Me personally, I got Leishman. Yeah. Got bamboozled by the old Leishman. And I honestly, sure, if he was playing bad, that's one thing. But this play has got to be an outlier, right? I mean, he lost over 8 strokes putting.
Yeah. Yeah, he's been playing great for a while. And so there's always the one week where things don't work out. And, a guy – like last year at this event, which we'll get to, Ricky Fowler was the can't miss play at this event and missed the cut. Mm-hmm. And he was coming off of 5 top 5s and 3 out of 5 events, something like that. So or 5 top 5s out of 7 events. It definitely happens, and it's I know we dwell on those guys, especially since you played them, but you looked at any of the other people in the field, there was plenty of guys that really didn't do much. Ricky, one of them. They just probably weren't in your pool, so you didn't really notice. But yeah, Leishman definitely didn't live up to the expectations. Another one was Kuchar on the weekend. He burned one of my teams, was looking pretty good. People just didn't want to play Kuchar, and I was like, heck yeah, I'll play some more Kuchar down in Mexico, and was looking great. I think he was second place after Friday, and then I don't know what happened. He practically shot 80 back-to-back.
Yeah, it was rough. I thought surely after shooting 8 over on Saturday that he would bounce back, but I think he shot 3 or 4 over on Sunday as well. Another guy, Phil.
I was about to say, he wasn't
first round.
He didn't bounce back like Phil.
Phil, I mean, he shot 8 over on day 1 and then 6 under on day 2. So
yeah,
that was not bad. I didn't have anybody that high. Again, I was just playing a single, so not much loss, but none gained. So not terrible in terms of a loss, but certainly looking forward to a week where it's a full field. We can really use those ownerships a bit more to our advantage, and just as you said, and I'll have to remind myself, play good players.
Yes. Hashtag play good players.
Yeah, hashtag.
You'll do better.
I like that one. Let's do that one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this week. And the next couple weeks, man, I'm going to go over to the Valspar. I'm going to check out the Arnold Palmer is probably my favorite tournament. I don't go to every single event on tour, but for Florida, even the Players Championship, it's okay. I never really loved the layout. Even playing it, I think, was a little bit overhyped, but the Arnold Palmer, the Bay Hill golf course, man, is unbelievable. So really looking forward to going to the Valspar and Bay Hill the next couple weeks. So
Nice.
yeah, ready to turn the page on the last few weeks of just nothing great, nothing terrible, but just dealing with weather and the tee times, and now going out to Mexico and the altitude. And honestly, the guys last week, really, the guys we expected to play well did. It's just you had to hit the nuts as far as getting an Affa Barnrat and Use Luton, whatever his name is, with DJ and Rory to really have a decent cash, because there's only 72 people total. So I'm looking forward to getting, like I said, switching back to cash this week as a primary focus. Bigger field, so there's more opportunities for others to make mistakes. So I'm excited. I'm ready for some Florida golf, some typical Bermuda greens. This will be fun.
Yeah, no, I like the shift to Bermuda. I feel like there's some guys that obviously play a little bit better there. Poa is a bit trickier, but some guys I like to roster when this Florida rotation hits. So
yeah, absolutely.
That also.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and hop in there again, guys. We appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Always, we appreciate if you can leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening. And we definitely appreciate it. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you can find us on iTunes and all the major podcast networks. And again, we come with you with a live show Wednesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern to talk through ownerships, any changes in our player consensus, and then answer your questions and help you start building some lineups that night before Thursday's first tee time. So looking forward to a fun week. So let's go ahead and hop into the course snapshot for PGA National down in West Palm Beach Gardens. So PGA National is going to play at just over 7,100 yards. It's a par 70 golf course. It ranked number 2 most difficult last year on tour. And that includes the U.S. Open, which we all know was a debacle. I mean, I can't remember what the stroke average was at Shinnecock off the top of my head, but I think it was over 75. So, yeah, PGA National ranked second on tour last year. The stroke average was 72.3. Average birdies per round was 2.5. Just, man, there's not a lot of opportunities. And I know wind was a big factor last year. So, include that a little bit in your research. You can look back at prior years and get a feel for it. But yeah, so driving distance, I think, is a couple things with off the tee we'll talk about real quick. But driving distance was the third shortest on tour last year, mainly because a lot of guys lay up off the tee. They're hitting less than drivers. They're really trying to focus on hitting fairways. So you'll see a better fairways number than you'll see in the past couple of events. So keep that in mind as well. We'll go over some key stats here in a moment, but I do want to note that the driving distance was 274 yards off the tee, when last week it was probably like 301 or 307, something like that. Going down the list, green regulation was the 4th most difficult on tour at 57.05%. So again, kind of goes hand in hand with the weather. It was tougher to hit some of those irons on the greens with the smaller green complexes. And then the last thing we would just touch on briefly with the Bermuda, the putting average was 6th most difficult last year. A little bit of a factor with the wind, but the Bermuda, these guys what they did was switch from POA back after the Genesis. They came to Florida and then went to the Mexico tournament last year. So the difference there, they're still going from POA to Bermuda. It's a little bit of a change for some of these guys that come from the West Coast that putted well. So I'd be keeping an eye on guys, maybe have putted well the past 4 or 5 weeks. They may have a little bit of a tougher transition than, Billy Horschel we saw last week really struggle coming back to Bermuda, which he basically grew up on, played college golf and a lot of his mini tour golf. So then the last thing I want to look at too real quick, kind of looking back at the last couple years event here. Like I said, 2018, The scoring average was 72.3. Going back to 2017, it was 70.56, and then 71.77 2016, 71.83, and those did rank the 5th and 4th most difficult on tour. So even with the win, without the win, this golf course is going to play very tough from tee to green. So we're really going to hone in on ball strikers. I'll go over my stats here in a second. I just want to bring in Jacob real quick. Do you have any other thoughts on maybe what you saw at the golf course, or is this pretty much kind of what's in line with your expectations? Obviously, the bear trap's famous, but we still have to play 18 holes. So looking at a bigger picture of the golf course, do you have anything to add there?
Only a few things. I know that in these smaller courses, a couple corollaries is the Sony. And then I think I saw Fort Worth was an interesting corollary course here.
Okay.
I would also be interested to look at maybe the Heritage, where, it's tighter fairways, smaller greens, and I believe that was Bermuda as well. So
yeah,
it's not. Yes.
No, it is. Yeah, Heritage
Okay.
is.
I didn't see that as at first look, but that's one that comes to mind as sort of a shorter course, a little tighter, and emphasis is a bit more on ball striking. Now, certainly there are guys that come to mind when you think of shorter courses, but like you said, emphasis on off the tee, fairways gained is going to be pretty strong in my opinion. Approach, obviously, and to your point about the wind, I certainly would take into account that the wind was really, really bad last year. Just on that briefly, the weather doesn't look near as bad as
Oh yeah, it looks pretty good actually, from at least the first couple of days.
Surprisingly good. It's almost as if the wind just completely drops off a cliff. Currently right now it's like sustained 20-mile-an-hour winds, gust up to 25.
Yeah.
But come Thursday, it drops off a cliff, and it's between 5 and 7 miles per hour. And honestly, right now it's projected to stay that way until about 4 p.m. on Sunday. Now, granted, these projections can change at any point in time. It's no finite thing, but certainly keep in mind that right now it's projected to be a little bit tamer than it has been in the past. That might allow a little bit more aggressiveness. Who's to say? But I still think that any time where the weather is going to be a little bit easier and not as big as a factor that you have to sort of play into all the other things that you're trying to pull together. I'll just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So for my key stats this week, it was pretty interesting digging in. There's always guys. I mean, we talk about this every week in every podcast. I mean, if you play DFS, you understand the variance where, a guy's gone through 3 or 4 missed cuts in a row and then finishes top 15 or something. So just kind of want to touch on the key stats for me and, some outliers that you may not want to consider. So like the 2 outliers big time from last year, the most popular guy in the field last year was Ricky Fowler, and he missed the cut. And his stats going in were immaculate, and I really couldn't fault you for playing him last year. He lost 2.87 strokes putting the first 2 days. So over 2 rounds, he lost almost 3 strokes putting. He gained strokes from tee to green. He gained 1.7 strokes tee to green. So really he didn't play bad. So we'll get to him in a second. He's a guy I like. And then conversely, Kelly Craft finished 8th. And he was basically dead last in every single category. He ended up gaining 3 strokes off the tee, or 3 strokes putting, and 6 strokes tee to green. And he just really flipped the switch. I couldn't blame. That's not someone that would pop up on your radar. So excluding some of these highs and lows as far as tee to green stats go, the key stats for me big time were off the tee. That was a huge one from last year. Just looking at the top 10 guys. They all ranked inside the top 50 off the tee. Strokes gained approach was another big one. There's a couple outliers in there, like Luke List had a really terrible approach numbers and finished 2nd, but off the tee he ranked 16th. So approach again is a really common stat to focus on this week, especially with guys laying back off the tee. They're going to have, a lot more mid irons for 7,100 yard golf course, they're going to need to hit those somewhat close, or have been hitting those well over the past couple weeks. Bogey avoidance, I think people will look to this week because of the course difficulty, and honestly doesn't check out as a key stat. I think playing the event, bogey avoidance is key, but going through like the leaderboard, Justin Thomas won the event and he wasn't grading out well in bogey avoidance. Luke List didn't grade out in bogey avoidance that well. Ben On, Tommy Fleetwood, like these guys aren't bogey avoidance guys to key in on, but they did key in on birdie or better. And with the scoring average being as bad as it was, I think people will overlook that. So I would highly encourage you to, dig in a little bit deeper on some of these stats going into an event. So birdie or better was actually a really key stat from last year's leaderboard for going into the event. Obviously in the tournament, they're not going to make that many birdies. They're going to avoid bogeys, but we're working on guys coming in with certain form. That's what we want to key in on. And the last two to hit on is par 4 scoring was definitely key in the event as well as lead in form. So par 4 scoring for this golf course is huge. And then again, like I said, every single week, green in regulation or fringe in regulation are key stats. So getting guys that are on in regulation up around the hole, not so much proximity, like proximity at this event last year. If you would have taken like the top 30 guys in proximity, 60% of them missed the cut. Like that's not good. So looking at green in regulation, they all finished inside the top 30. So definitely want to key in on green in regulation as well, which makes a ton of sense with a 52 or 57% green in regulation number. So overall, I think just really keying in on ball strikers, guys with a little bit of course history. There's some guys that have played well here in the past, guys that have played poorly, and you want to definitely key in on those. But yeah, as far as ball striking goes, birdie or better, off the tee, strokes gain approach, stuff like that is going to be huge for me this week.
Great. Yeah, no, I most of those are majority of those, I should say, are what I'm looking at as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty straight. It's a good golf course. It's one of those where the guy that's playing best tee to green makes a couple putts, obviously on the Bermuda, is going to win, but tee to green, that's why you see guys like Adam Scott have played so well here in the past. Ricky Fowler has played so well here in the past. Granted, even he had a miscut last year, but ball strikers is going to be key this week for sure. And I think we got a pretty good pulse on it. So I'm ready to hop into some of these plays. If you want to try to hit on some of these guys, start at the 10K range and work our way down.
Let's do it. You want to start it off, or I will?
If you want to start it off, man, take it away.
I can, and I will.
All right.
So I chatted about this with you a little bit earlier, but there are times when I more often than not will fade the top range, or at least the top one or two guys. And this is an event where I might just bite the bullet and play JT. I know that you've got some other guys that you've a bit more interest in here. I can certainly see the idea of salary savings by not playing him, but the way that he's playing right now, I mean, almost shooting, what did he shoot, 62 or something on Sunday?
He could have shot like 50.
Yeah, I mean, he was just insane. And that's at a course that he liked. This is a course that he's obviously won at before, plays well at. I mean, he's just otherworldly right now. And he's certainly priced tops for a reason. Betting odds, he's tops for a reason. I just think going with JT, if there are guys that you like a little bit better in this 7K range, and you're okay skipping the 9Ks, because I think ultimately that's what you might have to do. But JT is a great play, in my opinion. It would take a lot to pull me off of him completely for this week in like single entries. Another guy that I like in this range is Brooks Koepka. I think that he, despite his finish last week in Mexico, I think it's a little bit deceiving. He lost his accuracy off the tee was not great. I think his total strokes gained numbers were a little ridiculous. 7 or 8 total strokes gained, but he didn't. His approach wasn't all that great. I think I even heard somewhere, it might have been you that tweeted this, Drew, or somebody else, but he didn't even bring a TrackMan to Mexico.
Yeah, I heard that. I didn't tweet that, but I heard it.
He had no interest in determining his ball flight or lengths, or maybe he just didn't care and he just wanted to show up and see how well he could do. Maybe knock the rust off after a couple of weeks. I'm not sure, but
yeah, I find that hard to believe, to be honest. But if he says it, then I guess. But I just don't see someone doing that at that level.
And that might not be the case. You know, a lot of it's hearsay in social media, especially Twitter DFS. But still, I think that he is an interesting play this week. He's certainly, you know, a $1,200 savings from JT, world number 2. You know, he didn't putt that well at all on the POA there, or it was POA, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was POA last week.
Yeah, it didn't putt all that well, but you know, generally known as a better putter. Definitely got some interest in Koepka, and the bottom 2 there, Scott and Garcia. I mean, Sergio, his iron play is just lights out in the last 2 events. I think that he is beyond this DQ overseas when he went to Saudi Arabia, and I think Sergio's a good play. Certainly the price is up there from what we've seen the past 2 weeks, but still think that's a solid play.
But you're going JT over those guys, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
No. I'm just saying these are other guys that I've got interest in that aren't, you know, they're not bad plays down here. Certainly if you're doing multi-entry, you know, I wouldn't mind playing some of these guys. Not a ton in Ricky. I'd like to hear what you got to say about him, but yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, Ricky's fine. I would probably rather play Ricky over JT, but I'm not going to play any of those top 3 guys. I'll be looking at Adam Scott primarily for my main lineups, and I'll probably split it with Sergio, to be honest, at 10K. If I can fit, he's in the 9K range, but if I can fit Gary Woodland with any of those 2 in a decently balanced lineup, and I don't mean balanced from like staying around 8K, but you know, I don't have to dip to a $6,400 guy with a Gary Woodland, Adam Scott starting point. I'll do that. So looking back at this event, at least for last year, the top 3 lineups as far as total builds go, there was one. The number 1 lineup had one 10K guy, one 9K guy. They skipped the 8K range. They had 3 7K guys and one 6K guy. The second best lineup had 2 10K guys, 2 7K guys. They skipped the 9 and 8s, and 2 6K guys. And the third best lineup had the exact same build as far as 2 10Ks, 2 7Ks, and 2 6Ks. So the lineup construction from last year completely avoided the 8K range, which is what I plan to do, which we'll get to here in a second. But I think starting off at a lower point, JT has had very mixed results here. I don't think his course history is very good, with the 2 missed cuts mixed with 2 top 5s. So I'd be much easier to fade him coming off a good showing last 2 weeks and count for a letdown here with people trying to chase. So Adam Scott just grades out great. I mean, he won here a couple years ago. Sergio has really good sneaky course history, and if he's, you know, rounding into form off of last week in the Genesis Open, he didn't play great. Coming back this week to Bermuda, I like him quite a bit. So those will be the 2 that I'll try to match up with Gary Woodland. So I'll avoid the top 3 guys. I just don't see them paying off unless they win, which in a big field, lineup construction is far more important than just getting the winner.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and go down to the 9K range. And like I said, Gary Woodland will be my top choice up here. One of the biggest key stats I'm eyeballing for this event is strokes gained off the tee. Driving accuracy, I think people will look to, and it's really not important. These guys aren't hitting drivers off of all these tees. So if you are looking at driving accuracy, I think you'll fall into the wrong type of guys. Gary Woodland, with his driver, is one of the best on tour. When he clubs down, he's the number 1 player on tour. So Gary Woodland I like a ton this week. Going down the list further, Daniel Berger and Billy Horschel I'm kind of mixed on. I kind of like them both. I guess I'll see kind of where if lineup construction leads me on one or the other. they're a toss-up for me at the moment. Billy Horschel obviously can't putt on POA, and last week proved that. Coming back to Bermuda, ball striking wise on this golf course, he looks great. I really look forward to seeing how he does during this Florida swing. And he has 2 top 10s here in the last 3 years. So I like that. Berger's interesting, coming off of the second place last week. He's got really mixed history of second place 4 years ago. He's got 2 missed cuts in the middle and then a 29th last year. He's interesting as a GPP play. If Horschel's popular, I'll go to Horschel. Or if Horschel's popular, I'll go to Berger. And then the last one down there that I'll probably have in both of my main lineups, Mr. Luke List, which just pains me to say, but he checks a lot of boxes. He looks exactly the same as his lead-in form last year. So 9,200 Luke List is really scary with a guy like Ben On right there below him. But yeah, Luke List will be my guy if I had to go from a low-end range of the 9Ks.
Ooh, Luke List, that's tough to stomach, but
it is. He likes this place, and it's one of those perfect storms where you could just see it coming, where it's going to burn you. But statistically, looking at his lead-in form last year, you could see why you would play him. Obviously, strokes gained approach don't look great. Accuracy doesn't look great off the tee, and all the other ball striking stats look awesome, and that's exactly what he does on this golf course, and that's all he needs to do. So it may be slightly different if the weather is down. Like last year, I feel like in tougher weather conditions, his putting can be, his lack of putting, I should say, is somewhat minimized compared to the field because guys don't have a ton of birdie opportunities. So it could be a different game plan this week if scoring might be projected to be lower with the weather the way it is. But I see him playing this golf course too well to pass up at $9,200.
Okay. So in the 9K range, obviously, like you said, Gary Woodland seems kind of like a no-brainer. Just really, really good form coming in. Outside of this, he didn't play the WGC, did he? No, he did. Sorry. Good form coming in, and obviously, outside of 49th last year, the runner-up the year before. Like you said, clubbing down, he's just a monster. With a more accurate club in his hand, he can 3-wood or hybrid or driving iron, whatever, off the tee and be in really good shape. So Woodland is a great play. Also, really like Billy Horschel. But the guy I'm interested that you missed, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but Webb Simpson at 9,600. And Webb had a 5th here last year. Form coming in isn't terrible. Played 3 events, 39th last week at Mexico, and then a 20th at the Phoenix. So, again, it's not terrible. Might have liked to see just a little bit more form coming in, but certainly the 5th. His appearance last year was the first in probably 5 or 6 years. So, I would take that just a little bit into consideration, but still performance last year was there. So it's good to see that. Also, we all know about Simpson as a whole, his ball striking. His putting last week in Mexico was a little rough. I know he had a rough, I think it was first round or 2, and then had some good rounds over the weekend. Perhaps he was getting the putter dialed in a bit more, but Webb at 9,600 is one of my favorites in the 9K range.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like for $200 more, Gary Woodland I can't play both of them, so Woodland would be the guy for sure.
Yeah.
Grades out way better on a lot of the key stats I'm looking at.
And Webb, for that very reason, might be, significantly lower owned if Gary's right above him. So
could be. I feel like Woodland will probably play this course. He's played it more often. Very consistent. So
okay,
that'd be I can't really, like you said, you couldn't get talked off JT. Woodland is a guy I couldn't move off of. He'd probably be an outright bet over any of the guys up top as well.
Okay.
So, all right, let's hop down to the 8K range, and this is going to be somewhat of a dead spot for me, but I'm curious if you have anyone down here to keep an eye on.
So jumping right into the 8K, one guy that I do have some interest in is Lucas Glover at 8,800. He's played well here in the past. As I look at his course history, he's got 17th last year and a 21st the year before. He did have a 7th coming in as his most recent outing at the Pebble Beach. Now, granted, that was on POA. Typically, Glover, I think, is not known as a good putter. So
yeah,
you correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he's not a good putter by any means.
So, but he did grow up playing golf in, I think it was Southeast Georgia, or Clemson is where he went to school.
Yep.
And so, familiar with Bermuda, perhaps he might feel a little bit more home here. It might be evident in these last two finishes, the 2 years prior. So Glover certainly is somebody that a name that I'm jotting down on a Monday. He might not make it into the lineup when all's said and done, but certainly worth digging into a little bit. Another guy that I'm a little interested in, and I really need to dig into, is JT Poston. I think it was last week, or it might have been the week before, it was at the Genesis, and he actually played pretty well at the Genesis. I think he stumbled a little bit in the third round, I believe it was, but at one point he was maybe top 10 or top 15, striking the ball really well. Looking at his form prior to the Genesis, actually not bad at all. 28th at the Genesis, 26th at Phoenix, 40th at the Farmers, and a 7th at the Desert Classic, 20th at the Sony. I mean,
yeah,
really, that's really solid form compared to a lot of the guys in this range. He has played this event before, 2 years ago, and he finished 27th. So certainly, if you're falling in this range, there are guys that I would avoid. Griot at 8,900, I think, is just too much, and his form looks all out of sorts. Wallace, I can't explain why he's 8,500. I know he had a kind of a big round on Sunday in Mexico. Perhaps he's got some Euro form that I'm just not seeing. But and then the other guys down here, After Barnrat really backdoored a really nice finish in Mexico last week. So just name recognition alone, he might get some. But for me, really, my only interest, I'd probably say right now, are Glover and Poston.
Okay. Yeah, I'm planning to skip over this range. And one year of looking at lineups and how they kind of literally no one had the 8K range, and the people in the 8K range missed the cut last year that were the chalkiest. So I'll kind of see where some of these guys, like obviously Michael Thompson is already getting some buzz. He's had some really good finishes coming in. So he's one that I'll definitely bring up on the live stream Wednesday night, because I wouldn't say I'd be happy to play him, but if he's really not going to be 10%, like a couple weeks ago we were talking about Sung Kang, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, all the ownership projections showed him at 5%, and I was like, that can't be right. And then he came in at 4.5%. And if Michael Thompson is going to be in that situation, then he'll be a guy I would play, just off of the recent form. The course history I don't think is great, but he does seem like a guy that can strike the ball well enough on these less than driver tee shots just to get in position with his second shots. Yeah. I think Lucas Glover is in play. Griot, you just touched on him, and just real quickly, I mean, he just can't putt. His ball striking's there. People played him last week. I'm not really sure. He was cheap, but he was in a limited field, so everyone's a little bit cheaper when they get to the low end. But Griot's ball striking stats still look decent. I mean, he was pretty good last week, but he just can't putt. He is coming to Bermuda, so he should be able to do a little better than the POA splits the last couple of weeks. But he's not a guy I would be willing to pay $8,900 for in this event. But like you said, so Lucas Glover, I think, is definitely in play. I could certainly see him striking the ball well on this type of track. Obviously, off the tee is good. He won a U.S. Open the same way. So I could see Glover playing well this golf course. And 8,800 I don't think is a ridiculous price. And I'll second your JT Poston call. He's been really consistent, making a lot of cuts. 8,400 in this field, I think people might think is a bit expensive, looking at like a Zach Johnson right above him, or a Scott Piercy right there, Russell Henley, and these guys that have maybe won the event. Russell Henley won a few years ago. But yeah, Poston has been surprisingly consistent. So I wouldn't mind anchoring like my sixth guy if I got back to the middle range with 8,500 and I went JT Poston. So I'm kind of the same boat there as far as the Glover and Poston call. And then when ownerships come out Wednesday, that'll be if I take a Michael Thompson share or if I pivot to Piercy, which I think is a pretty equal pivot there.
Yeah.
All right. So anything left up there in the 8K range?
No, I'm done with the 8s, man.
Yeah, me too. All right. So coming down in the 7K range, it's loaded as far as I'm concerned, man. There's a lot of ways you can go with this. The first one right off the bat, I think CT Pan and Russell Knox are going to make both of my lineups, one or the other in either of them. So CT Pan's course history here is not the best. It's not like, he's finished top 3 a couple years in a row. But CT Pan grades out really well from a ball striking standpoint on a course where accuracy is demanded. So I like CT Pan quite a bit. Russell Knox is another one that I like a decent amount coming off of last week. He had, like back in 2014, I think, or 2015, he had back-to-back top 3s, and his form coming in here is really good. So I could see him kind of rekindling that fire of playing well at this golf course. He's another ball striker that does well. And if the wind gets up, he's even more of a bonus. Like, I feel like if the wind was up right now, he would be a guy everyone would go to because of his history from Scotland, playing in the Irish Open. He won like back-to-back Irish Open, Scottish Opens last summer in the win. So yeah, I think Knox could play really well at this golf course. And then the last one down there, which pains me to say, but I think Joaquin Niemann is back in play this week. I'm hoping he's more under the radar. People are falling out of love with him. But yeah, Joaquin Niemann, I think this golf course, I wouldn't call it short, but I think it still fits his skill set. So kind of in the high range there for the 7K range. Those are the 3 names that are going to be in those 2 main lineups.
All right. Sounds good to me. So I'm going to start this high range off with Graham McDowell at 7,600. I was really surprised to see his course history here is really, really strong. He missed the cut last year. If I count back, 5 or 6, 7, I think 7 events, he's got 2 missed cuts, and then the remaining finishes are 6th, 9th, 46th, 5th, 14th. So
yeah. And he had last year was a fluke year kind of for him. He wasn't playing much and wasn't playing very well. He's definitely playing better now. So that's actually a pretty good call. I might have to look into him more. I didn't notice his course history from, 5 years ago was that good. So
yeah, so really,
I can see that.
Really strong. And really, if we're talking 3 years ago, 5th, 14th, and then a missed cut during 30-mile-an-hour gusts. So missed it by 2 strokes. It wasn't like he was, out by 5 or more. Last week at Puerto Rico, he finished 42nd. At Pebble, he had a really good performance, finished 18th. So, McDowell was really, really interesting to me at 7,600. I think he's in the range of a lot of people that you mentioned, Knox, Pan, Niemann, and he might go overlooked. So certainly that adds interest to my interest. Another guy that I don't mind is just below him and Niemann is Taylor Gooch at the same price, 7,600. And Gooch, I don't think that he's got 1 appearance here last year. He missed the cut. And his form coming in is a little up and down. I think that he's a very young talent. this might be his rookie season, I believe, if not for his sophomore season. So not a super well-known guy, but he missed the cut in his past 2 events. But before that, he finished 3rd at the Farmers and 4th at the Desert Classic. So we're seeing some talent there. I mean, Farmers is certainly not an event. It wasn't a weak event by any means. And, coming 3rd there, I think Justin Rose won that one. So it's not like, he's doing well in, lesser field events. So certainly might be a name worth looking into. I think he'll probably for multi-entry, you might toss him in there. I don't think single entry or cash it would be a play, but maybe Neiman more so than him. But I do have some interest in him, certainly if you're doing multiple lineups. And then if it's all right with you, I'll go ahead and jump into the lower half of the 7Ks.
Yeah, let's hit the lower half.
First and foremost on my list, 7,400, Mr. Dylan Fratelli. I
love it.
Yes.
I'm on some Fratelli this week.
Yes, love Dylan Fratelli. Just love his game in general. Really good off the tee, long. I mean, that means he's going to be able to club down and be even more accurate. He had his first appearance here last year. He finished 11th, and he has had some really not terrible results this season. 28th at the Genesis, his last appearance. Missed the cut at Pebble Beach. Missed the cut at the Farmers. 28th Desert Classic. Yeah, I just think that, this is his first full year on the PGA Tour. He's well known on the European Tour, South African. So wins get up. I'm not really as concerned with him. I think he's an excellent play in this range. Certainly in GPPs, I would almost say cash. Might be interested to see what you say about that.
I think he's at a decent price to do that.
But really, really like Dylan Fratelli there at 7,400. Dropping down just a little bit further, Sungjae M at 7,300.
Yeah.
Off of rest. Fire up Sungjae M. Jason Kokrak at 7,300 also. Really like that play. I mean, like you said, this 7K range is just stacked. I mean, we could name a ton of people.
Kokrak, I thought, would play better at this golf course, and he never has. He seems like a guy that would play a course well with an iron off the tee or 3-wood off the tee clubbing down. But he's only made the cut twice here, and those were 42nd and 41st place finishes. All the rest were missed cuts. So I was looking at Kokrak a bit earlier, and his form looks decent, but it's never been like out of place before, and he's never played well here. So he was one that I took off my list. It doesn't match up for some reason. I'm not sure why. So when in doubt, X him out. That's what I say.
I like it. I like it.
I learned that at the SATs, man.
Oh, nice.
Because I think you lose points when you miss a question. So
yes, that's true.
Yeah, they said when in doubt, exit out.
Wow, that's SAT knowledge for.
Hey, man, I didn't do well on it, but I didn't answer any questions wrong. I just didn't answer a bunch.
All right. So the last guy in this range that I like is Mr. Rory Sabatini at 7,000 and even 7,000. Form coming in is not great. Miscut, 70th, 57th, 33rd. So certainly nothing to sniff at. But his course history is interesting. He has won this event before, all the way back in 2011. He's had 3 missed cuts since then, but he's also had 33rd, 11th, and a 17th last year in that windswept edition of it last year. So if you are looking for a play in this range and looking at course history, Sabatini is certainly, when I was looking at it, surprised me to see that course history. I honestly didn't even know that he had won this event, but current form may push people off of him, and rightly so. But if you're looking for a dart, 7K, Mr. Rory Sabatini, I like that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll have to look into him a little bit. That's actually his course history isn't bad. And again, like, course history doesn't necessarily mean, oh, he's finished top 20 every single year. It just means that he's seen some upside.
Oh yeah.
You know, if you're splitting hairs at the top range and you see JT has finished top 5 years in a row, and you know, some guys finished 40th a couple times and then finished top 2, you know, I would lean JT off of the course history, quote unquote, right? But you know, Sabatini, looking at, you know, he's got an 11th place there, 17th last year, and a first place back in 2011. Like, that course history, quote unquote, would be good because he has the upside for a 7K guy. So that's kind of what I would be eyeballing there. In this range, I'm definitely going to echo your sentiments as far as Dylan Fratelli. I think he's, I wouldn't say he's underperformed so far on tour, but he's definitely, like, he's underpriced for what he should be doing. And he just hasn't done that yet. So yeah, Fratelli, I think, is a cash play. You mentioned that. He 11th place finished last year. Obviously, it's one event, one sample size for that tournament. It's not really enough to go off of, but you look at the way he grades out statistically in his recent form. Fratelli grade it sets up really good for him. Sungjae's back on the list, and he's a guy.
Some hesitation there.
Well, not so much hesitation. I think so someone on Twitter that you could follow, he's at Jedlow. The last couple weeks where I got off of him when he was at his, I think, 5th event in a row, and I was like, dude, he's playing his 5th event in a row. I mean, eventually he's gonna get fatigued. I'd rather be a week early than a week late. And then we hear, oh, he's played like 10 events in a row over there on the Japan tour. So I'm like, all right, well, here comes a week 6. I'm hopping back on. And he doesn't play bad, doesn't play great. Week 7 rolls around, I hop back on him. The guy's like, on Twitter, keeps telling me, don't play him on POA. Don't play him on POA. And I was like, dude, just chill. I got this. He misses the cut at the Genesis. He can't make like a 3-footer for birdie on a dozen holes. Like, all right, man, I'll listen to you. So he's like, all right, he's back on Bermuda, play Sungjae M. So don't want to give away his play, but Sungjae M, he says, on Bermuda, play him. So I'm going to play Sungjae M, man, 7,300. Ball striking's still there. That's no different. It's just putting.
Yeah. Lock it in.
Yeah, and I think Bermuda's tricky there's nothing like POA for sure. Nothing like POA, the inconsistencies and the bumps, but Bermuda is weird for guys from up north to come down where they have to learn to read the grain. But once you learn to read grain and once you learn how to understand the way Bermuda grows, it's a really easy surface to putt on. I think it's just a really weird concept for guys that are used to playing on bent grass. But yeah, it's not a surface I'm concerned with splits as much as POA. POA just seems like a mental, it's just a rough go each week. So yeah, Sungjae M, not to harp on him too much, but yeah, I think he's a fantastic play again this week, especially on this golf course. The other one down there that I'm trying to figure out where I stand. I'm curious, I guess, where you're at is Mr. Trey Mullinax. He played here a couple weeks or 2 years ago. He missed the cut by 3 shots, but his form coming in has been some of the best we've seen of him in a while. And he's a longer hitter for sure. So obviously, if you look at the club down aspect of things, it should be in there. He struggles with the putter from time to time, but if his ball striking stats stay where they've been, I think Trey Mullinax is a fantastic play on this golf course. $7,100. There's not a lot of people around him that grade out that well. Like Kyle Stanley's just below him, and he can't break 80 on a pitch and putt.
You know, I gotta admit, I didn't look at Mullinax that much. I know he's known as a longer hitter, so he's gonna be clubbing down.
Correct, which is good.
Like Gary, right?
Yeah, I mean, most of these guys will be to some degree, but I mean, I like 2 years ago he wasn't playing how he's playing right now, so I would throw that year out. Now, if he goes and misses the cut again this week, then it'd be back in the Kokrak category of he grades out well, but he doesn't like the golf course for whatever reason. But we don't know that yet, and he grades out well, so I'm going to play some Mullinax.
All right.
That's all I got for that. It's a somewhat clear week, I guess, at least so far.
Yeah.
So we can hop down to 6Ks. And again, like I said, I'm going to try to stay somewhat balanced after the, high 9s and low 10K guys that I put into a lineup. And I'm not touching too many down in the 6K range. So I'm curious where you stand down here, and then I'll kind of hit on my top 3.
So I've got a couple guys. The first guy that really, pops out to me, and that's really just based on how he's played here in the last couple of years, is Nick Watney. He 2 years ago he finished 14th, last year 33rd. If you want to jump all the way back to 2014 and 15, he had a 24th and a 41st also. So, we're looking at all made cuts here. 2 T24s or better in a 5-year span.
Yeah.
His form coming in, though, is concerning, obviously. 2 missed cuts, 72nd at Farmers and a 51st at Desert Classic. So,
and again, it's a different golf course than Farmers.
It is. It certainly is. But I think he might be worth your time just because, like you said, course history carries a lot with that stigma.
Yes.
But
yeah, I like that actually.
The way that he has performed over the course of, let's say, 5 years, 4 or 5 appearances, I think means that he has got, like you said, it's got a feel for this event. It's not that he's dropping top 5s all over the place. But he knows, there's upside there, especially for a 6,900 guy. Another guy that I've got a little interest in is Austin Cook, also at 6,900.
Mm-hmm.
I think Austin Cook is really intriguing to me just because on a sheer talent level, I think he's really talented. I think he hasn't played this event before. I know you're probably looking at his sheet and you're like, what are you talking about? Hasn't played here before. His 2 events this year were miscuts, but I think that this type of course screams Austin Cook. He's like a younger version of Zach Johnson. He can be long off the tee, but he's really known for being
he's not
accurate,
long.
Yeah,
he's more of an accurate guy.
Exactly, accurate off the tee. Pretty good ball striker. Overall, I think his game is just very solid. Last year, he won a PGA Tour event. Had some. I'm not looking at his last year form right now, but had some decent finishes. I think that he had a big time off by having a baby and coming back in. Only played 2 events compared to a lot of guys that have played 6 or 7 so far. I think certainly at 6,900 it's worth looking at him. But Austin Cook certainly is a guy that I'm looking at. And then the last guy really that I might throw in a lineup is Keith Mitchell, 6,700. I know that Keith Mitchell is like the enigma of the lower plays in PGA DFS because everybody's on him at one point. It might be chalk in this region, and then he blows it, doesn't play well. But Keith Mitchell is certainly a very long hitter, so we know that he'll definitely be clubbing down a lot off the tee. His only attempt here last year was a miscut. His form coming in here is pretty terrible outside of a 16th at the Sony Open.
Yeah.
So, that's one of those. We know the talent is there. We've seen what he can do. But I think he's a younger player, certainly, and he might be trying to get acclimated to PGA Tour life. I think this might be year 2 for him, I believe. But certainly Keith Mitchell, at this point, like you said earlier, Drew, if we can avoid this range, then there are plenty of options in the 7K that you could just stack 7K, play 4 guys from there and call it good. But if you're looking to, double up top with 2 high guys, and you might be pushed down into this range, then those are a couple guys that I like. Watney, I think I would rate them. Watney because of course history, Cook, and then Mitchell last for me.
Okay. I got a couple down here, and I think they're going to be pretty sneaky, so I'll give you a taste of a couple of them. Right. First one, right off the bat, I'm just going to hop down to the mid-range for you. Johnson Wagner is priced at $6,500, and from the various sites that I have viewed today and people tipping already, not a single person has mentioned that he finished second last week. They didn't even bring him up in like that he's been playing. So yeah, Johnson Wagner, he was a late add to the field. I think someone withdrew, or because of his top 10 finish on Sunday, he got in. But yeah, Johnson Wagner. So he played last week at the Puerto Rico Open, finished second. He hit 71% of his fairways, 73% of his greens in regulation, and he had 20 birdies for the tournament. And not many people, everyone's concerned with strokes gained, and they're all going to be looking at the WGC Mexico. So keying in on these 6K guys that played last week in Puerto Rico, I think is actually going to be a pretty decent edge if you're just like lost, right? If you're down here and man, they all suck. Okay, got it. Now let's figure out, what are you looking at? What's everyone else looking at? Where could we go different? And I think using the Puerto Rico Open is a decent way to differentiate. It was actually, I mean, driving accuracy there, I think, was up a little bit, but still, most people know Johnson Wagner as a good iron player. And if he can get the ball and play off the tee, he should play well here anyways. So another name that's below him, which I'll touch on, then I'll hop back to the high end real quick, is I have to play him. And kind of like you mentioned, Sabatini, I think you were talking about his course history, right? You would not believe the course history for Mr. Freddie Jacobsen at 6,000. And he missed the cut. Like this last couple events have been like, but he's had, just starting back in 2009, which is a long time ago, granted, he had 5th place, a 6th place, a 29th place, a 16th place, 25th place, and then a 12th place. Then he had his little back deal or shoulder deal, and he went miscut, 26th miscut. So I think Freddie Jacobsen at 6,000 actually is a really interesting way to build a lineup because of how much salary that saves. Like, you know, just saving $900 off of a $6,900 guy is a pretty big deal. So I definitely am planning to use Freddie in at least one lineup. If he misses the cut, then I understand the risk I'm taking. But if he can just make the cut and finish, 40th, and that allowed me $900 to move up to, if I'm in the mid 8s and I can get to the low 9s to like a Billy Horschel or somebody like that, that'd just be huge for my lineup construction. So that's kind of what I'm eyeballing there. So then kind of going back up to the top range, you mentioned Keith Mitchell, and he's one of those I struggle to play. Like he comes up on some courses that are longer, and I can get away with him not driving it great, and it just doesn't seem like the best course for him this week. I know he missed the cut only once last year here, but I have a tough time going back to him unless it's a bit wider open. So I'm probably going to avoid that. The last one I'll talk about actually is down back at the low end that I'm somewhat interested in. Hopefully, I think he grades out better than a lot of guys in the 6K range, but also should come way under the radar. No one's going to go down this low, and if they do, they're not going to dig in as much, as much as they should. So a guy that I'm really interested in played here last year, and he ended up finishing 33rd. He played last week at the Puerto Rico Open. Again, no one's going to be looking at Puerto Rico Open stats. No one's going to be looking really at that tournament, or they won't know how to rate it or rank it with the level versus like the WGC Mexico. Like they're not going to know how to compare the two field strengths. But he finished 18th at the AT&T Pebble Beach. He gained some strokes putting on the POA, got it. He was around an average of 0 for both off the tee and approach. He basically graded out as a net 0. And then last year, he finished 33rd. Last week, he finished 10th. So again, looking at the Puerto Rico Open stats, he hit 76% of the greens in regulation. 65% of his fairways, and he had 16 birdies, 5 bogeys, and 1 double, which most of the field had at least 1 double or worse at that event. But yeah, he's 6,200. I think he's another one in that category where he grades out. To me, he grades out better than a lot of these guys, and he probably will be like sub 1% owned. So he's one to keep an eye on for sure.
Okay. One guy I want to get your take on. What do you think about Mr. Hank Lebioda?
I mean, he's probably not going to be that popular. I probably won't pay too much attention. He's not consistent enough for me to really play him.
Okay.
Yeah, do you have anything on him? Because I mean, he plays well one event, gains strokes putting, and then doesn't play well the next event. So he's too inconsistent, and he's a rookie, at least on the PGA Tour. So I don't really have a lot to go off of as far as the golf course goes.
Yeah, no, I knew this was, I think, his first year, and had seen him play. Not terrible, but didn't know if that was worth a flyer or not.
I mean, 6K guys, if you're building multiple lineups, are all worth a flyer. If you're building a couple, then you got to be a little bit more picky. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I know there's a couple guys in here that I want to, like I said, the Puerto Rico Open was something that was eye-opening looking back to last week. So I'll dig into that a bit more for the Wednesday live stream. But yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this range here. I know it's just not something I'm too interested in, having to have a bunch of guys deep. So trying to hand pick them is going to be key.
Yep. Agreed.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast as usual, and we'll see you again later this week for your article, The Contrarian Corner, and of course Wednesday night on Twitch. You can find that at twitch.tv/redkachik, and it comes on at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go through all of these last-minute player thoughts, ownerships, projections, stuff like that. It's really fun. We got a full chat room, so looking forward to that as usual. Always a good crowd. And again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. I'm Red Kachik. That's JK Ray, ASU. You can find us at fantasygolfbag.com and sign up, learn about the new Showdown model and the new Showdown tools to help you start building some real daily golf lineups. So we'll leave it there, guys, and we'll see you later this week for the PGA live stream Wednesday night. Have a good one.